The morning sun of Kepler 442b cast long shadows across the mining platforms when the first explosion shook the ground. Administrator Velthar dropped his datapad and rushed to the window of his office tower. What he saw made his blood run cold. Ships were falling from the sky. Not his ships. These were dark, angular vessels that looked like metal sharks with their mouths open wide. They were firing red beams of light that cut through the colony's defense shields like paper. The peaceful mining settlement that had been his home for 20 years was under attack. Velthar had heard stories about raiders from other parts of the galaxy, but they had never come this far out. The Zephyrian people were miners and scientists, not warriors. They had chosen this distant world precisely because it was far from the troubles of the inner systems. Now those troubles had found them anyway. "Sir, you need to get to the emergency shelter," his assistant Kira said as she burst into the office. Her usually calm blue skin had turned pale with fear. The Korthak fleet just destroyed platforms 7 and 12. They're heading for the main settlement, the Korthak. Velthar knew that name from the worst stories told in spacer bars across the galaxy. They were pirates who showed no mercy to anyone. They took what they wanted and killed everyone else. No one ever survived a Korthak raid to tell about it. "How many ships?" Velthar asked as they ran down the corridor toward the emergency command center. 12 heavy cruisers and at least 20 smaller attack ships, Kira replied. "Our defense platforms managed to damage 2 of them before they were destroyed." Velthar's heart sank. The colony had 6 defense platforms, each armed with the best weapons the Zephyrian military could provide. If they had only managed to damage 2 enemy ships before being wiped out, then the situation was hopeless. They reached the command center just as another explosion rocked the building. The main screen showed a view of the colony from space. Red laser fire was raining down on the settlement like a deadly storm. Buildings were collapsing, and fires were spreading through the residential areas. "Evacuation status?" Velthar demanded. "Transport. Ships are loading civilians at landing pads 3 and 5, reported communications officer Zen. "But the Korthak fighters are hunting them down. We've already lost 2 transports with 300 people aboard." Velthar closed his eyes and tried to think. 50,000 Zephyrians lived in this colony. Even if they could get every transport, ship working, they could only evacuate a few thousand before the Korthak destroyed them all. The colony's small security force was fighting bravely, but their light weapons were useless against military-grade armor. "Sir, War Chief Grextar is demanding our surrender," Zen said. "He says if we give up now, he'll let some of us live as slaves. And if we refuse, he says he'll kill everyone and take what he wants from our corpses." Velthar looked around the command center at his people. They were scientists and engineers, not soldiers. They had families and children hiding in the shelters below. Some were probably already dead. In a few hours, they would all be dead unless something changed. "Sir, what are your orders?" Kira asked quietly. Velthar walked to the communications console. There was one thing he could try, though the chances of success were almost 0. The colony had a long-range emergency beacon that could send messages across half the galaxy. It was meant to call for help from the Zephyrian homeworlds, but those were weeks away even at maximum speed. "Open all channels," he told Zen. "Maximum power. Send the signal in all directions." "Sir, that will drain our backup power completely," Zen warned. "If the main generators fail, we'll have no life support." "We won't need life support if we're all dead," Velthar replied grimly. He took a deep breath and activated the beacon. His voice would now travel across space to anyone with the equipment to receive it. Most ships wouldn't bother to listen. Even if they did, who would risk their lives for strangers? "This is Administrator Velthar of Kepler Colony 7. We are under attack by Korthak raiders. Our defenses have failed. We have 50,000 civilians, including children, who will be slaughtered unless someone helps us. We have no military ships and no way to fight back. Please, if anyone can hear this message, we need help immediately. We don't have much time." He paused, then added, "We know we have no right to ask strangers to risk their lives for us, but if there's anyone out there who believes that innocent people shouldn't die for the greed of pirates, please help us." This is Kepler Colony 7, requesting immediate assistance from any capable vessels in the sector. Velthar ended the transmission and slumped in his chair. Around him, his staff worked frantically to coordinate the failing evacuation efforts. The main screen showed more buildings burning and more Korthak ships descending toward the surface. "How long until they reach the residential sectors?" he asked. 20 minutes, sir," Kira replied. "Maybe less." 20 minutes. That was all the time 50,000 people had left to live. Velthar wondered if his message would even reach anyone before then. Space was vast and empty. The chances of a ship being close enough to help were tiny, but he had to try. It was the only thing left to do. Outside, the Korthak ships continued their methodical destruction of everything the Zephyrians had built. War Chief Grextar was in no hurry. He enjoyed watching his enemies suffer before he killed them. It made the victory more satisfying. The colony's children were crying in the underground shelters while their parents tried to comfort them. The security forces fired their weapons at the attacking ships until their ammunition ran out. The transport ships that hadn't been shot down yet were overloaded with desperate families trying to escape. None of them knew that a message was racing across space at the speed of light, carrying their desperate plea for help to the dark void between the stars. They didn't know that somewhere in that void someone was listening. In the command center, Velthar watched the countdown timer on his screen. 15 minutes until the Korthak reached the civilian shelters. 14 minutes, 13. "Sir," Zen said suddenly, "I'm picking up a transmission." "From the homeworlds?" "No, sir. It's much closer. The signal is strong and coming from the edge of our system." Velthar felt a spark of hope, though he tried to crush it before it could hurt him. "What does it say?" Zen listened to his headset for a moment, then looked up with wide eyes. "It says, Kepler Colony 7, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the USS Defender. We received your distress call. Help is on the way. Hold on." For the first time since the attack began, Administrator Velthar allowed himself to believe that they might survive after all. Someone had heard their call for help. Someone was coming. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defender, staring at the star map that showed their current position. They were 3 days out from the nearest human colony, running a routine patrol mission in the Outer Rim territories. It was supposed to be a quiet assignment after the crew's last combat deployment. That changed the moment Lieutenant Sarah Kim picked up the distress signal. "Captain, I'm receiving an emergency transmission," Kim called out from the communications station. "It's coming from the Kepler system about 6 hours away at maximum slipstream." Morrison walked over to her station. "What's the message?" Kim played the recording. The voice that came through the speakers was clearly alien, speaking in accented but understandable English. The desperation in the administrator's voice was unmistakable. Morrison had heard that same tone before from human colonies under attack. Fear, hope, and the terrible knowledge that death was coming. "How old is this transmission?" Morrison asked. 15 minutes, sir. Given the distance, whatever's happening, there is still happening now." Morrison hit the ship's intercom. "All senior staff to the bridge immediately. This is not a drill." Within 3 minutes, his command team had assembled. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Harper, his tactical officer, stood at attention beside the captain's chair. Chief Engineer Danny Rodriguez wiped grease from his hands with a rag as he emerged from the engine room. Dr. Amy Carter, the ship's xenobiologist and medical officer, arrived last, still carrying a datapad from her research. "Listen to this," Morrison said, and played the distress call again. When it finished, the bridge was silent for a moment. Rodriguez was the first to speak. "Korthak raiders," he said grimly. "I've heard about them. They don't leave survivors." "How many ships are we talking about?" Morrison asked Harper. The tactical officer consulted her instruments. "Long-range sensors are picking up at least 12 large vessels and multiple smaller craft. They're all showing Korthak energy signatures." Dr. Carter looked up from her datapad. "Captain, I've been researching the Zephyrians. They're a peaceful species. Miners and scientists, mostly. They don't have any significant military capabilities." "So, they're defenseless," Morrison said. Completely, Carter confirmed. Their entire philosophy is based on avoiding conflict. They probably have nothing more than basic security forces. Rodriguez shook his head. Captain, with respect, this isn't our fight. We're one ship against a whole Korthok fleet. The Defender is tough, but she's not built to take on those odds. What are our capabilities against Korthok ships? Morrison asked Harper. In a straight fight? We might be able to handle 3 or 4 of their cruisers if we had the element of surprise. Harper replied honestly. But 12 ships plus fighters? That's suicide, sir. Morrison walked to the main view screen, which showed the stars ahead of them. Somewhere in that darkness, 50,000 beings were about to die because a gang of pirates wanted their resources. He had served in the Earth Defense Force for 15 years, and he had never walked away from people in need. Dr. Carter, in your opinion, what happens if we don't respond to this distress call? Every Zephyrian in that colony dies, Carter said without hesitation. The Korthak will either kill them outright or work them to death in slave camps. Either way, an entire civilization gets wiped out. And if we do respond, we probably die. Too, Rodriguez said bluntly. But at least we go down fighting. Morrison turned back to his crew. These were good people. They had families back home, dreams and plans for the future. He had no right to ask them to throw their lives away for strangers they had never met, but he also knew they would never forgive themselves if they didn't try. I'm not going to order anyone to do this, Morrison said. This is volunteer only. Anyone who wants to can transfer to an escape pod now, and I'll have another ship pick you up later. No shame in that. This is probably a one-way trip, the bridge. Crew exchanged glances. Harper was the first to respond. With respect, sir, you're stuck with us. I didn't join the Defense Force to run away from fights. Rodriguez nodded. The engines are running at 98% efficiency. I can push them to 110% if we need the extra speed. That's way beyond safe operating parameters, Morrison warned. Captain, if we're going to do this, we might as well do it right, Rodriguez grinned. Dr. Carter stepped forward. I'm no fighter, but those people are going to need medical attention. I'm staying. Morrison felt a surge of pride in his crew. Kim, set course for the Kepler system. Maximum slipstream speed. Aye, sir. Course laid in. Harper, I want you to start working on battle plans. Assume we're going up against superior numbers with no backup coming. Already on it, Captain. I'm thinking hit-and-run tactics. Use our superior maneuverability to pick them off one at a time. Good. Rodriguez, how long can you keep the engines running at emergency power? Maybe an hour before we start risking a core breach. But if we're going to make a difference, an hour should be enough. Morrison sat in his captain's chair and activated the ship-wide intercom. All hands, this is the captain. We've received a distress call from an alien colony under attack by Korthak raiders. We're changing course to render assistance. I won't lie to you. The odds are bad. We're going up against a force that outnumbers us 12-1. He paused, letting that sink in before continuing. But here's what I know about this crew. We've never backed down from a fight when innocent lives were at stake. We've never left anyone behind. And we've never let bullies win without making them pay for it. Today won't be any different. The response was immediate. Cheers and shouts of approval echoed through the ship's corridors. Morrison smiled. His crew was ready for whatever came next. Harper, send a message to the colony. Tell them help is on the way. What should I tell them about our numbers? Harper asked. Morrison thought for a moment. Tell them the truth. One ship, but it's a human ship. That should be enough. As the USS Defender jumped to slipstream speed, racing toward an impossible battle, the crew prepared for what might be their final mission. In the weapons bays, Lieutenant Ben Taylor and his team checked every missile and charged every energy bank. In engineering, Rodriguez's people worked to squeeze every bit of power from the ship's systems. In her medical bay, Dr. Carter prepared for casualties, both human and alien. She had studied Zephyrian physiology enough to know how to treat their wounds, assuming any of them survived long enough to need treatment. On the bridge, Morrison stared at the countdown timer showing their arrival at Kepler. 5 hours and 37 minutes until they dropped out of slipstream and entered what would probably be the last battle of their lives. But they were going anyway, because that's what humans did. They showed up when others needed help, regardless of the cost. The USS Defender dropped out of slipstream at the edge of the Kepler system with a flash of blue light. Captain Morrison immediately saw the worst of his fears confirmed on the main screen. The Zephyrian colony was burning. 12 massive Korthak cruisers hung in space like dark metal vultures, their weapons firing down at the planet's surface. Smaller fighter craft buzzed around the orbital platforms, hunting down escape ships trying to flee with civilian refugees. Red laser fire cut through space in all directions. "Tactical report," Morrison ordered. Lieutenant Commander Harper's fingers flew over her console. 12 heavy cruisers, approximately 20 fighters, and at least 6 troop transports heading for the surface. The colony's defense platforms have been destroyed. I'm reading multiple fires and structural collapses in the main settlement. Any word from Administrator Velthar? Communications Officer Kim shook her head. The colony's main transmitter is offline. I'm picking up scattered emergency signals from individual buildings, but nothing coordinated. Morrison studied the enemy formation. The Korthak had arranged their ships in a standard raid pattern, with the heavy cruisers providing covering fire while the smaller ships moved in for the kill. It was efficient and brutal, designed to crush any resistance quickly. "Sir, we're being hailed," Kim reported. On screen. The view screen filled with the image of a Korthak warrior. War Chief Grextar was exactly what Morrison expected from the stories he had heard. Scarred face, metal teeth, and eyes that showed no mercy. The alien wore battle armor decorated with the bones of his victims. "So," Grextar said, in heavily accented English, "another species thinks they can interfere with Korthak business. I am War Chief Grextar, commander of this fleet. You have entered a combat zone, stranger. Leave now, and I will let you live." Morrison stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel USS Defender. You're attacking innocent civilians. Withdraw your forces immediately." Grextar laughed, a harsh sound that sent chills through the bridge. "Humans, I have heard stories about your kind. You think you are warriors, but you are just another weak species that will kneel before the Korthak." "You haven't met humans like us," Morrison replied calmly. "One ship against my entire fleet?" Grextar's laughter grew louder. "You are either very brave or very stupid human. Perhaps both. I offer you the same choice I gave the blueskins below. Surrender now, and some of your crew can live as my slaves. Refuse, and I will add your bones to my collection." Morrison looked around his bridge at his crew. Harper was ready at tactical. Rodriguez had the engines running hot. Dr. Carter was monitoring alien communications to coordinate rescue efforts. Kim was trying to reestablish contact with the colony. Every one of them was prepared to die for people they had never met. "War Chief Grextar," Morrison said, "you picked the wrong day to hurt innocent people." The transmission ended. For a moment, space was quiet, except for the distant explosions on the planet's surface. "All hands battle stations," Morrison announced over the intercom. "This is it, people. Time to show these pirates what humans are made of." The bridge lights dimmed to red as the Defender's combat systems came online. Harper armed every weapon the ship carried. Rodriguez pushed the engines past their safety limits. In the weapon bays, Lieutenant Taylor's teams loaded the torpedo tubes with everything they had. "Sir, the Korthak fleet is turning to face us," Harper reported. "They're forming an attack formation." Morrison sat in his captain's chair and studied the tactical display. 12 ships against 1. The smart play would be to use hit-and-run tactics, striking fast and retreating. But the colony didn't have time for a long battle. Every minute they delayed meant more civilians died. "Harper, target the lead cruiser, full torpedo spread." "Sir, if we attack now, they'll surround us," Harper warned. "Then we better make every shot count." Fire. 6 torpedoes streaked through space toward the nearest Korthak cruiser. The enemy ship's shields flared as the weapons impacted, but the cruiser kept coming. Return fire filled the space around the Defender with deadly energy beams. "Shields at 80%, reported Ensign Pete Wilson from the engineering station. Target their engines, Morrison ordered. We need to slow them. Down. The Defender's main guns opened fire, sending streams of particle energy toward the Korthak formation. One beam found its mark, and a cruiser's engine section exploded in a ball of flame. The ship spun out of control, colliding with one of its companions. 2 ships down, Harper announced with satisfaction. But the remaining 10 cruisers were closing fast, and their combined firepower was devastating. The Defender shook under the impact of multiple hits. Sparks flew from control panels. As systems overloaded, shields at 40%, Wilson called out. Morrison realized they needed to change tactics. Fighting at long range, the Korthak could use their superior numbers to overwhelm his ship. But if he could get in close, their own ships would limit their firing angles. Rodriguez, give me everything the engines have, Morrison ordered. Sir, if I push them any harder, we risk a core breach. Do it anyway. The Defender suddenly accelerated, racing directly toward the center of the Korthak formation. The move was so unexpected that several enemy ships had to adjust their aim, giving the human vessel precious seconds of reduced fire. They think we're retreating, Harper observed. Let them think that. Target the command ship. I want Grextar to know we're serious. The Defender's weapons focused on the largest Korthak cruiser, the one flying the war chief's personal banner. Multiple hits penetrated its shields, causing explosions along its hull. The ship was damaged but still fighting. Incoming message from Grextar, Kim reported. Put him through. The war chief's face appeared on screen again, but his expression had changed. The arrogant confidence was gone, replaced by confusion and growing anger. What kind of warriors are you? Grextar demanded. No sane species charges into the middle of an enemy fleet. We're the kind who don't abandon people in need, Morrison replied. Last chance, Grextar. Leave this system now, or we'll make you leave. You are 1 ship. I still have 10 cruisers. Then you better hope 10 is enough. The Defender continued its charge into the heart of the enemy formation. Korthak ships fired from all directions, but their shots were less accurate, now as they tried to avoid hitting each other. Morrison's crew used every trick they knew, rolling and spinning to present the smallest possible target while their weapons struck back. Direct hit on Cruiser 7, Harper reported. Their weapon systems are offline. Another one breaking. Off, Wilson added. Engine damage. The battle was turning into something the Korthak had never experienced before. Instead of the quick, easy victory they expected, they were facing an enemy that refused to die. The human ship kept fighting even as its shields failed and its hull took damage. War Chief Grextar watched his fleet being picked apart by a single vessel and felt something he had not experienced in decades of raiding. For the first time in his career, he began to wonder if he was going to lose. The USS Defender was deep inside the Korthak formation now, surrounded by enemy ships on all sides. Sparks flew across the bridge as another hit shook the ship. The lights flickered, and the smell of burning circuits filled the air. Hull breach, on Deck 7, reported Ensign Wilson. Emergency teams are sealing it now. Captain Morrison gripped his chair as the ship rolled to avoid another barrage of enemy fire. The Defender was taking a beating, but it was also giving one. 3 Korthak cruisers were already destroyed, and 2 more were limping away with heavy damage. Shields are gone, Lieutenant Commander Harper announced. We're fighting on armor now. Morrison nodded grimly. This was the moment he had been expecting. Without shields, the next few hits would start tearing through the ship's hull, but they had come too far to give up now. Rodriguez, how are the engines holding up? Running at 115%, Captain, came the reply from engineering. I can give you maybe 10 more minutes before we risk a complete meltdown. 10 minutes. That would have to be enough. On the main screen, Morrison could see the Korthak ships trying to form a circle around the Defender. War Chief Grextar was no fool. He had realized that his ships were getting in each other's way, and now he was trying to organize a coordinated attack. Sir, I'm picking up transmissions from the planet, Communications Officer Kim reported excitedly. Administrator Velthar is alive. The colony's emergency shelters are holding, but they won't last much longer if the bombardment continues. Morrison made his decision. The Defender couldn't win a defensive battle not against these odds, but maybe they could do something the Korthak would never expect. Harper, I want you to target every ship in this formation at once. Load all remaining torpedoes. Harper looked at him in surprise. Sir, that's our entire remaining arsenal. If this doesn't work, we'll have nothing left. If this doesn't work, we won't need anything left, Morrison replied. Do it. The weapons officer's hands flew over her controls. All tubes loaded, targets locked on 8 remaining cruisers. Rodriguez, I need one more miracle from those engines. Can you give me emergency power to all weapons? Captain, if I do that, we'll definitely lose main power within 5 minutes. 5 minutes is all we need. Do it. The Defender's engines roared as Rodriguez pushed them beyond every safety limit. Power flowed to the weapon systems like never before. The ship's torpedo tubes glowed white-hot as they prepared to fire everything at once. War Chief Grextar saw what the humans were planning and couldn't believe it. They're going to fire everything at once, he told his bridge crew. When their weapons are empty, we'll destroy them easily. But he had never fought humans before. He didn't understand that humans would rather die fighting than live in defeat. Fire. All torpedoes, Morrison ordered. 24 torpedoes launched from the Defender at the same time, creating a deadly cloud of explosives that spread out toward every Korthak ship in the formation. The enemy cruisers fired their defensive weapons, trying to shoot down the incoming missiles, but there were too many coming from too many directions. The first torpedo hit Grextar's flagship, punching through its damaged shields and exploding deep inside the ship. The second and third torpedoes followed, turning the War Chief's bridge into a ball of fire. More explosions rippled through the Korthak formation as torpedo after torpedo found its target. When the light faded, 5 more Korthak cruisers were gone. Grextar's flagship was drifting in space, its engines dead and its weapons offline. Only 3 enemy ships remained capable of fighting, and they were all damaged. Direct hit on the command ship, Harper reported with satisfaction. Grextar's vessel is dead in space, but the victory came at a cost. The Defender's engines finally gave out and the ship went dark. Emergency power kicked in, but it would only last a few minutes. Main power is gone, Rodriguez reported over the intercom. I'm trying to restart the reactor, but it's going to take time. Morrison looked at the tactical display. 3 Korthak ships were still out there, and they would be regrouping soon. The Defender was a sitting duck without power. Then Kim's voice cut through the tension on the bridge. Captain, I'm receiving a transmission from the remaining Korthak ships. Put it through. The face that appeared on screen wasn't Grextar. This was a younger Korthak officer with fear in his eyes. Human ship, the alien said in broken English. This is Sub-Commander Vrektal. War Chief Grextar is dead. We wish to withdraw from this system. Morrison stood up slowly. You attacked innocent civilians. You killed thousands of people. Why should I let you leave? Because, Vrektal said, his voice shaking. We have learned that humans are not like other species. We did not know you would come so far to help strangers. We did not know you would fight so hard for people who are not your own kind. The bridge was silent. Morrison looked around at his crew. They had done the impossible. They had defeated a force 12 times their size through sheer determination and courage. If I let you go, Morrison said to the Korthak officer. What guarantee do I have that you won't attack another colony tomorrow? Because word of this battle will spread throughout the galaxy, Vrektal replied. Every pirate and raider will know what happened here. They will know that if they attack innocents, the humans might come. And if the humans come, they will fight, until they win or die. No treasure is worth facing an enemy like that. Morrison nodded slowly. Take your ships and leave this system. If I ever hear of Korthak raiders attacking civilians again, I'll come looking for you. Understood, human captain. We go now. The 3 surviving Korthak ships turned and jumped to hyperspace, fleeing as fast as their engines could carry them. The battle was over. Kim, open a channel to the colony. Kepler Colony 7, this is Captain Morrison. The Korthak fleet has withdrawn. You're safe now. Administrator Velthar's voice came through the speakers, thick with emotion. Captain Morrison, we cannot thank you enough. You saved 50,000 lives today. How can we ever repay you? Morrison smiled for the first time since the battle began. You don't need to repay us, just help us get our ship running again so we can make sure everyone down there is okay. Over the next several hours, Zephyrian engineers worked alongside the Defender's crew to repair the ship's systems. Dr. Carter treated wounded civilians while Rodriguez got the engines working again. The colony's medical staff learned human medicine, while Carter learned Zephyrian biology. As news of the battle spread across the galaxy, something important changed. The Zephyrian Collective formally requested to join the human-led coalition of free worlds. Other species began to reconsider their positions on mutual defense and helping strangers in need. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the repaired Defender as they prepared to leave Kepler. On the planet below, Zephyrians and human volunteers were already working together to rebuild what the Korthak had destroyed. Course laid in for home, Captain, Kim reported. Take us out, Morrison ordered. As the USS Defender jumped to hyperspace, carrying the news of their victory back to human space, one thing was clear. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about humanity that day. When humans heard a call for help, they answered. And when they answered, they didn't give up until the job was done.